Welcome to episode 2 of the Magazine Mania podcast. Today we are going to be looking at the August 1986 issue of Inside Wrestling. Look at that $1.75 cover price. In the magazine in episode 1, Stanley Weston was listed as president and publisher. Now he's listed as founder and chairman of the board. Peter King went from editor-in-chief to senior vice president and publisher/editor-in-chief. Bill Apter went from managing editor to senior editor. Stu Sachs from assistant editor to managing editor. I find it interesting personally seeing where these names move throughout the years. Outside of the articles I'm covering, the Paul Ellering versus Jim Cornette Roll Call of Champions, and Where Are They Now articles also caught my eye. But talking about articles, let's get to the first one we're covering today. This is an interesting article talking about the Wahoo Jimmy Garvin feud when Jimmy returned to the World Championship area, as they call it. It talks about Ronnie's relationship with Jimmy, friendship with Wahoo, and how Precious fits into everything. Modern fans would probably be most familiar with Jimmy Garvin as a member of the Fabulous Freebirds. Ron Garvin, also known as Hands of Stone, is a former NWA champion, winning the championship in 1987. This next article really puts over Hogan's victory over Bundy at WrestleMania 2. It detailed the injury that Hogan sustained going in and how much that put his victory in doubt. It's funny to see how the magazines write about WrestleMania when it's still such a new concept. They described it as WWF's latest extravaganza of silliness and sport. The only other match mentioned is the British Bulldogs winning the tag team championships from Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. I love how they write about Hogan overcoming the injury and how they detailed the match. This is what made wrestling magazines the best. You could pick up a magazine, read about a match you may not have ever seen, and feel like you watched it by the way they described it. It's one of the many reasons I created this podcast, because I miss articles like this. This is what really drew me in as a fan of wrestling magazines. Love those advertisements on the side. Now, this next interview is done by Stu Sachs after Martel lost the AWA Heavyweight Championship to Stan Hansen. It features Martel talking about how he's recovering from the loss, both mentally and physically. It did a great job of describing the match, the toll the match took on Martel, and he looks like the biggest hero in his comeback. This article was wild for me because I'm really only familiar with Rick Martel as a bad guy. I thought he debuted in the WWF as the Model, but when I looked it up, he teamed with Tony Gurria in like 1980 and was the tag team champion way before this. And yet another reason why I created this podcast, so I can learn more about wrestling than I thought I already knew. And like with this, the older the magazine, you can see different sides of wrestlers you might be familiar with or not familiar with. And not being familiar with a wrestling personality really leads into this next article, because this article tells of Sir Oliver Humperdinck bursting into a courtroom. He's doing this because he wants to sue the Fabulous Ones. Humperdinck was claiming that the success the Fabulous Ones attained under his tutelage leaves them owing him, since now they have left him. This is one of the most fantastical articles that I've read, but it's a fun read. I didn't grow up watching Humperdinck. I kind of heard of him, and really have only seen him from watching old Mid-Atlantic tapes. This article shows the array of types of articles the magazines offer, and as always, we are going to finish up with the mailbag section. The first letter is from a guy praising WrestleMania 2, especially Hogan's victory over Bundy. The letter really echoes the Hogan article discussed earlier. Next letter is from a guy in Memphis disputing a negative letter written about Jerry Lawler in an earlier issue. It's always interesting to hear fans put over their favorites. The third letter is in response to an article, Whether the Road Warriors Fear Nord the Barbarian. The writer puts over Nord, but ends his letter by saying the Road Warriors will have no equals for a long time to come. Fourth letter wants Ric Flair dethroned as NWA champion. Writer wants a champion that brags less and represents the championship better. And the final letter is responding to a fan letter from a previous issue, giving Dusty gruff for injuring Ole Anderson's leg. Always great to see fans' responses through the years and how opinions can change. But remember, new episodes drop every Monday, rankings on TikTok every Wednesday, ads every Friday on Instagram at 6:05.